I was born in New York City, born and raised in New York City, born in Hell's Kitchen, funny enough, and raised in Queens and suburbs of Long Island. And I was actually baptized Greek Orthodox. So my family on my dad's side is Greek Orthodox. The family, my father's from Egypt and his father was from Syria. And so they're Christians going way, way back. And my last name is I think in Arabic actually means like a version of the translation Greek, or a guy that married a Greek woman. So there's Greek somewhere in there, and I'm assuming that's where. I haven't done a genealogy thing yet. I probably will at some point soon. But yeah, so the family was Greek Orthodox, and then my father growing up in Egypt. Because he didn't go to public school. As a Christian, you went to Catholic school. So the family was raised knowing the Catholic faith as well as their Orthodox faith. And they're very, very similar in a lot of tenets. They recognize, for instance, each other's baptismal rites. And when we moved from New York City to the suburbs, there weren't a whole lot of options for Orthodox churches. And my mother is Roman Catholic. She's from Ireland. So it was, it was an easy transition. It was sort of seamless for my father. And for us, it seemed, it was myself and my sisters. It wasn't any real difference, just slightly cultural differences. With the communities. So the Greek Orthodox community we were familiar with before we started attending Mass in the Catholic faith were Arabic. It was an Arabic community. And then when we moved, it was more of an American community. So yeah, so I grew up with both. I grew up with a love for both churches. They're the Orthodox rites, the marriage and the baptisms are just so beautiful, and they're so different in a lot of ways to the Catholic rites. There's something that resonates with me about it, but at the end of the day, what I appreciate about both of them is that they're sacramentally based, and that to me is how I've really found myself going deeper into my own faith is through the sacrament. And if you had heard the story, this sort of showed up miraculously outside my door one day, 3 days after I prayed for something for this exact image. I didn't know that this image existed. And my father was a devotee of the Divine Mercy Novena for many years, and the image that I was familiar with was not this one. It was one of the later ones, and I wasn't really. I'm also an artist. I wasn't really fond of the portrait,
Right.
And I didn't know that existed, and so I prayed when I was living in my one-bedroom apartment in Queens. One day that I was dealing with some personal issues, and I wanted to explore the novena and the chaplet, and I wanted to have an image to pray with. And I just said to myself, I wish that there was like an Orthodox icon style or something
Right.
that would be just a little icon that I could just hang in my little apartment that would be not too huge or giant, but just, I don't even know if it exists, but wouldn't it be nice if that was available? And 3 days later, this showed up outside my door. Outside my door, there was a the mailboxes for the building, and people would leave stuff on top of the box that they want, have a penny, take a penny, but like with books and CDs and albums and VHS tapes at the time, and whatever they didn't want that other people might find use in. And so I went outside, and literally on top of them in the middle, this was just sitting there. I said, okay, I guess that's mine. So, and I was so astounded because, like I said, I had no idea that even existed. No idea that was a real thing. And so that was the beginnings of, I think my real journey to where I'm at now and where I continue to travel. And I told that story to the director of this production, this traveling show about the life of Saint Faustina. I told Leonardo de Philippis that story, and he's like, "Yeah, when can you start?" It was a no-brainer for him. Prayer being earthly permission for heavenly interface, and that, God may have something planned for us, but we have to ask for it because we're given free will. So we have to ask for it in prayer for him to allow it to come to us. If we don't, or we don't acknowledge him, or we disavow, or we pretend he's not there, well, it's all this stuff is there for you. You just have to ask for it, which means acknowledgement and, subverting your ego and getting into a mindset of humility. And even this prayer hour for me every day, it's an exercise in humility, because I've never had so much trouble reading before than when I started this prayer hour. I'm like, what is going on here? But it's a reminder that people, I know that it's not about me, but I think it's a reminder for everyone watching that are fans of the show that I'm not Jesus. I'm a clearly flawed human being. So that's what I'm thinking. But in doing so, it also checks my ego very thoroughly, which I'm very grateful for. So. Reversion might be the wrong word. Deeper conversion is a more accurate phrase. I think I've never really there was never really a point in my life where I was disconnected from my faith. It might have been a little lukewarm. It might have been a little casual at times, but I've never been disconnected from it. God's been too prevalent in my life on many occasions, from as long as I can remember, as early as I can remember, even as a child. It was probably about 2 years ago, this May, where, for a while I had just been struggling as a performer, as an actor, and in between agents. And out here, without agents, you don't get auditions, and you don't have an opportunity to work and do what you feel that you're brought out here to do. And I had been out here already 8 years, and I had a few jobs, but it was just, one thing after the other, and lots of time in between jobs. And I was juggling probably 6 or 7 different side hustles simultaneously. And when I focused on any of them to try to get more of them, to get more work, to sustain myself, to make more money, nothing would happen. Like, I couldn't make more money. Like, no matter how many, it's like, it seemed like the more jobs I had, the less money I made, which I just didn't understand. And I got to the point where I literally was on my knees. I had a month's worth of bills that were starting to kick in now, like on auto payment in the next week, and like thousands of dollars. And I was so stressed. I was in debt. And I literally was on my knees, and I was crying, basically saying to God, I said, I don't know why you brought me to this place. I don't know why I'm here. I think I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing. I feel that you've put this in my heart to be an artist and to do this and serve you in some way, but I'm having a hard time making ends meet. I can't make ends meet. I need you to basically step in at this point. And if I'm meant to go home, I had been asking for a long time, if this is not what I'm supposed to do, let me know. And I didn't get anything else that hit me that I should be doing instead. But I was literally brought to my knees, and I said, you know what? I'm done. I don't know what else to do. So if this is where I'm supposed to be, you got to step in because I don't know what else to do. So I'm going to give it all to you and you take care of it because I don't know what else to do. That afternoon, in the mail, I got 3 checks that covered all my bills coming up in the next month within $5. And I was beside myself. I said, you gotta be kidding me. And I was, you know, I literally was like, so this is how it's gonna be, huh? Full and complete surrender, huh? Okay, you got it. And from that point, from that moment on, and it was a Saturday morning and a Saturday evening that I'll never forget when I got those checks, that my life literally turned on a dime, and it's never been the same since. I've never worried in the same way. I've never been stressed in the same way. I've never had the same kind of financial pressure in that very same way, given those circumstances. I've had, you know, obstacles like all of us do. I've had situations, but how I handled it was completely different from that moment on. And I resolved to just not stress and know that even if it's in the 11th hour, God will figure it out. I just got to remain true to him and trust him, and he will not let me down, and he hasn't. And it was, let me see, May. So it was 3 months after that I was confirmed to start working on The Chosen.
Wow.
And then that, about a month later, I was in Texas filming. Well, yeah, I don't feel that I've ever crossed the line or compromised my faith or my ethics because of my faith and because of what's important to me. You know, I've never been in a position where I was offered, you know, an enormous sum of money to do a role that I might be challenged with, and you know, maybe God's kept that from me, that option from me, for good reason, you know, until he knew I was where I needed to be spiritually before offering me any kind of, you know, real success. And I still haven't, you know, nobody's offering me $1 million to do The Chosen. I'll tell you that right now. It's like, I mean, you look at what they're raising for the show. It's by all standards, it's low budget. It's a super low budget. Not super, but it's very, very extremely low budget for what we're doing. And by the grace of God, it looks high budget. It feels high budget when you watch it. And that's, I mean, that's the Holy Spirit working through this project to elevate it to, you know, a place that us as humans could not do on our own. So, I'd have to have the openness. I have the responsibility as an artist to have an open mind to evaluate what it is being presented to me. But if it's something that I felt would compromise me morally or spiritually or ethically, then I would have to turn it down, you know, regardless of the money, because I know at the end of the day, it's not just about money. It's about what I'm putting out there as an artist. It's about how people see me, especially now, having played Jesus in such a very strongly received work. I now feel more responsibility myself. So I don't want to do it. I find myself no longer interested in the kinds of things that I might have been open to previously. Years ago, I might have been like, yeah, usually those scripts aren't great, but if the right, you know, project came, if it was, you know, decent, or, you know, the money was good, like I could see myself maybe just doing that just to kind of make a paycheck and then move on to the more artistic things. Now I wouldn't. It just doesn't interest me. I'm interested in doing projects that uplift the human spirit, and I'm now also realizing through my deeper conversion, the spiritual weight and associations with certain kinds of projects that, you know, promote certain levels of darkness. And now I see them as different things than I did before. I don't see them as just, you know, entertainment, blind entertainment. Now I start to question, like, why would somebody make this particular piece of work? What is going on with the filmmakers behind this particular project? And I've, you know, through other conversations I've had with people that have worked on like crew side of some of those kinds of projects in television, there was a demonic kind of, you know, presence within the people, you know, calibrated for that project. And I you know, I believe in the demonic as much as I do the heavenly, and you know, its balance. So it's not something that I take lightly anymore. And I think expressing that, or getting secular folks, especially in the industry, to understand that, can sometimes be a challenge. But again, God's blessed me with people in my own camp, you know, the few that there are professionally, to be to kind of be on board with my decisions and to understand where I'm coming from, and you know that at least I'm open to reading things and looking at things, but there are some hard lines that I won't cross for sure. And you know, it's a bit of a challenge as an actor, because you know, you don't want to know who can make money off of somebody that's always turning down jobs, you know what I mean? Right. So my job is to find the characters in there that have some sort of redemption. I mean, I love my job as an actor. I love getting the stretch of it, you know. So finding the humanity, finding the redemption, finding the spiritual arc for characters that might start out on one side of the spectrum and getting them to another. You know, what's their journey like? You know, that's my job. For me as a Christian, if I'm really practicing my faith, God is a part of my existence in everything that I do. So I'm not only just acknowledging him fully and completely with my being, but I'm trying to evaluate how this role can better be served through my faith, the lens of my faith as well, if that makes sense. With what we're doing with The Chosen, there's more liberty. There's a lot more scenes in between the scenes, and we're taking more time to flesh it out. It's not a 6-hour miniseries, you know, 3 of which are spent on the New Testament, and 3, you know, or leading up to Jesus's birth, and then it's the last 3 hours is his birth to his death. Like, how do you do all that in 3 hours? And so what Zeffirelli did with that was nothing short of monumental. So I have a much greater advantage than anybody who's played Christ for the ability to humanize him, because of how long we get to take with the stories that we're telling. And then also, you know, it's been encouraged to kind of, you know, lean into his humanity. Everything is on the page pretty much. And then there'll be moments where we can have a little bit of improvisation. I think there's something that I threw out in episode 6 when I healed the leper, when Jesus heals the leper, and we give him a new coat. Thaddeus brings his green coat and he puts it on, and I just threw out, "Not too shabby," you know, and I just it wasn't scripted, it just kind of came out, and it just sort of stuck. And I'm like, did I just say "not too shabby"? You know, but people loved it, and he kept it in, and it was, again, this colloquial kind of relatable Jesus that, like, hey, he does this divine miracle, this God-driven, spirit-creating miracle, and then he's back to relating to him and, like, you know, bringing a little levity to it, because it's a heavy scene. And that's something, like, you know, Dallas loves infusing levity when it's appropriate. Because to have to have had a life and to know what was coming for him, Jesus had to deal with it in some way. You know, I mean, it wasn't like he was working out, you know, bodybuilder to get all that potential stress and tension. Like, how am I going to deal with all that? You know, it's like, well, how do you deal with these kinds of circumstances as a human? I mean, as God, we know. I mean, it's his destiny, and he ordained it. But as a human, dealing with human emotions and the physical confines of the human vessel, how do you deal with stress? So I like to believe, and I think Dallas is on board, that, you know, he laughed a lot. He loved children. Children love to laugh. He had to have a sense of humor. He had to be, I mean, he was super smart. So I think that's what I tend to bring to it, I guess, instinctually, as how I think Jesus would handle certain situations, has seemed to have worked and resonated with what people want their version of Jesus to have been like, and what they feel like he could be, to experience humanity in its fullest, while also being, you know, completely divine. I think I approached. Well, thank you for citing that. That's one of my favorite episodes. That was the first episode of the second half of season 1 that we filmed, and that was all, like, I think that scene might have been day 1 for me. And so that moment, teaching the kids or listening to the kids pray the Shema, which is the essential Jewish prayer of you know, thanksgiving and praise and acknowledgement to God. I mean, it's a foundational prayer. And so it struck me that if this was the first time Christ hearing that prayed by a group of children together, that wasn't, you know, as this budding teacher, this rabbi about to start up his ministry, and not just like when he heard it as a kid, but like, you know, that episode is about Jesus almost kind of, Dallas says, sort of testing out his ministry, you know, like, and he's testing it on children, and not testing like, you know, putting them through a test, but just like his first chance to teach people and teach kids, and his love for kids, and we get to see the love for kids. So hearing Jesus, hearing the children pray this foundational prayer, essentially, that is directed towards him, towards the deity in him, the Godhead in him, is so emotional. Like, it's, for me, that moment was trying to communicate the perfect relationship between the Creator and his creation. That perfect act of praise and worship brought to him by these pure souls that at this point in their development are still just 100% love.
Right.
I mean, they may be kids and they may, you know, knock on each other, and, you know, but their spirits and their souls have not been corrupted by mankind, the times, by the earth. And so you have this level of purity that is just reaching the Creator, that can't help but stir humanity within him, to just have this being music to his ears. So that's more where I was coming from with it. It's hard to remember exactly in the moment what I was thinking, because a lot of the times these moments kind of come and go, and I'm not aware of what's going on, but I know that I'll have a plan, and then I'll try to release the plan, and then just let God bring through the Spirit whatever comes out. Right. One of the things I believe, one of the thoughts that may have also crossed my mind is that possibly not all of these children will continue this relationship the rest of their lives.
Right.
You know, some of them may be growing up to become Pharisees, or one of the ones that will put him to death, obviously. But I think knowing if there was any sadness, it might have been knowing that they won't always be this way,
Right.
and at this level of love and purity and incorruptibility at that point,
Right.
So, yeah. I know I can say generically that this project has brought a number of the actors, a few of the leads, to a place spiritually that they hadn't been before. I know some of them experienced spiritual warfare and even taking on the project.
Right.
And then once they took the project, it gave them through the lens of faith, it gave them the objectivity to see that was what was going on, is that there was something working against them coming closer to their faith by taking this project on. And the overall feeling on set is that this project is very special in that way. I mean, it's like every project, there's always going to be hardships and, running into jams and obstacles and, emotions and people, at odds or in agreements and whatever, good highs and lows, right? But this project, for me, I mean, I can only speak for myself, really, has had an abundance of love and peace and harmony amongst a cast and crew, specific to the interactions than anything else that I've ever worked on. This show has brought people to a better understanding of Christ's humanity. I've received emails like that. I received an email from a woman in Tokyo who had had a very rough life. And up until I received this email, I think early in the year, this year, and up until a couple of months prior, she had never even opened the Bible. She had worked in porn. She had been divorced with 4 kids and never read a Bible until she met a missionary 2 months prior. And the missionary had recommended the show to her. And by this point, she had been out of that industry and trying to get her life back on track. He recommended the show to her, and she watched the whole season and watched a number of the interviews and committed her life to Christ after that, because she felt so much more drawn to Christ than she felt drawn to Christ. She was drawn to the Bible, she was drawn to Christ, and it affected her life in such a significant way that she felt dedicated to giving her life to Christ, which is, it's what more can you ask for? Yeah, it's a miracle. Right. It's a miracle. And the people that I've been praying with every day on Facebook Live, a number of them are Protestants, and they've started asking questions about the rosary and bought beads. And one woman who I can't remember if she's a Baptist but she was Protestant, and she'd never prayed a rosary and never prayed a Divine Mercy Chaplet, and wrote me a message saying that she had signed up for RCIA and was going to get baptized. For me, that's why I'm doing this. That's what I'm supposed to be doing right now. At this point, at this juncture in my life, this is what God put me here to do, in a very imperfect way as a human, to be a vessel for the Spirit of His Son to work through this TV project, The Chosen, to work through this prayer time, to work through this the new nonprofit that I started, that my friend of mine started, that I'm now a partner with, called the GK Chesterton Theater Company. We just For the last 2 years, we've been performing The Passion live. This year, we couldn't do it. So we put out a refreshed edit of what we filmed last year. And people have been so moved by it and sharing it with people like everything else. And everybody in the cast has been, I mean, we would start rehearsals up until we couldn't rehearse anymore. We would start rehearsals with prayer. We would end with prayer. And, you know, some of the other actors came up to me and said, you know, I've been looking for a way to get involved with my faith more. And I didn't anticipate it happening this way, but thank you for doing this. And thank you for you know, allowing us, for being so, I guess, transparent about your faith and incorporating it into your art, essentially, is
Right.
the message that they were giving me. So people are hungry for this. And I think the fact that we're going through this, you know, worldwide pandemic has allowed people to reevaluate their relationships to their creator, and or even start looking for that relationship. And if I can help, you know, lead them to Christ in some way, you know, I feel that that's what I'm here to do.